direi che è un natural step, è un passo naturale quello di essere accompagnati in un processo di rigenerazione, per cui invito Ezechieli e Veronica Fervier che condivideranno dalle loro prospettive. Eric, come fondatore di NATIVA, appunto aiutano le aziende, lui e il suo socio Paolo Di Cesare, le aziende a creare valore, a essere rigenerativi, perché adesso era già da tempo che cercavo di togliere la parola sostenibili dal vocabolario, adesso c'è l'ottima scusa. E quindi chiedo prima a Eric e poi a Veronica invece che parlerà di B-Lab ed è responsabile di B-Lab in Italia, di dare le loro prospettive e aiutarci tutti a capire come intanto si possono fare dei passi naturali e incrementali verso quello che tutti vogliamo.
Va bene, grazie, grazie a tutti e tutte per essere qui. In NATIVA abbiamo scritto la rigenerazione del nostro statuto nel 2012 e qualcuno sa che quando l'abbiamo fatto la Camera di Commercio respinse il nostro statuto per 4 volte di seguito perché era illegale, non era riconosciuto dal codice civile, e poi sono successe tante cose da allora e vi do un po' una prospettiva, se possiamo mettere la prima slide, la metto io, su come rigenerazione e governance sono due cose che non possono essere separate l'una dall'altra, anzi dobbiamo avere la rigenerazione assolutamente coincidente con la governance delle imprese. Qualcuno sa cos'è questo simbolo? Allora, questo è il simbolo della prima corporation. Quanti minuti ho, Cristian? 7?
7, sì. Cioè 6...
Già andati.
Te li tolgono troppo.
La prima corporation al mondo codificata, diciamo, con i canoni moderni, il 1602, la Compagnia delle Indie Orientali, che appunto trasportava merci dall'Oriente verso l'Europa, base Olanda e Inghilterra, era davvero la prima multinazionale, la prima corporation, e aveva un business model assolutamente solido e lucrativo. E sapete su cosa era fondato? Era fondato sugli schiavi. La Compagnia delle Indie Orientali si stima abbia trafficato qualcosa come 1.200.000 schiavi che appunto generavano lauti profitti, e quello era il paradigma normale, direi praticamente dominante allora, era assolutamente normale nel 1602. Oggi ci sembrerebbe una follia totale pensare che il business model di un'azienda sia fondato su questo. E crediamo che, a proposito di visione di rigenerazione, tra qualche anno, the sooner the better, più presto possibile, ci sembrerà inconcepibile che un'azienda possa fare dei profitti ad excapito di qualcuno, di qualcosa, prendendo più valore di quello che crea. Quindi oggi sta accadendo ancora così, ma la Regenerative Society Foundation ha proprio lo scopo di sviluppare conoscenze, competenze e strumenti per far sì di poter evolvere oltre e far sì che ciascuna azienda, ciascuna attività economica sia intrinsecamente rigeneratrice. E come NATIVA ci occupiamo di questo, portiamo questi temi, strategie, strumenti, modelli, praticamente innovazione dentro le aziende, per far sì che diventi normale un paradigma di rigenerazione. E questo può sembrare una cosa, dicevamo prima, ancora di là da venire, in realtà è già assolutamente presente. Siamo parte, mi sento anche di dire, catalizzatori di una community, di un network di migliaia, decine di migliaia di aziende del mondo che già ragionano in questi termini. Quindi ce ne sono tanti in Italia, moltissime sono parte proprio di questa fondazione. Però stiamo parlando di un fenomeno globale di imprese, imprenditori, shareholder e organizzazioni che si pongono questo come obiettivo. E già abbiamo avuto qualche insight da Paolo ed Andrea sul perché sia urgente questo tipo di transizione e diciamo anche indispensabile. Questa è una proiezione sul PIL globale nel 2026, 124 trillion. Vedete l'Italia qui, con i nostri 2,7 trillion. Pensiamo anche che l'Europa 30 anni fa pesava circa per il 30% del PIL globale, adesso pesa intorno al 16-17%. Allora, con la crescita economica che abbiamo oggi, provate a dire in quanto tempo raddoppierà questo? quanto ci vorrà per raddoppiare più o meno? Vabbè, vi dico io, crescita del PIL globale negli ultimi 60 anni è stato il 3% all'anno, andiamo a raddoppiare nei prossimi 23-24 anni. Quindi diciamo 250 trillion prima del 2050. Oggi consumiamo 2 pianeti, ce ne serviranno 4. È assolutamente impossibile. Non può funzionare col modello che abbiamo oggi. Quindi ripensare la governance non è così un'utopia, un'aspirazione, un desiderio, è ineluttabile, è indispensabile, non c'è altra possibilità. Anche perché, già si accennava prima, diceva il professor Davines, è vero che il PIL cresce, ma il benessere delle persone continua a diminuire. Quindi questo decoupling, ormai dagli anni 70 in poi, vediamo per quanto il PIL cresca, le persone non stanno meglio, le disparità sociali, problemi ambientali, tutti i side effects di questa crescita fanno sì che le due curve continuino a divergere e sembra che questa accelerazione vada accelerando. Quindi un esempio di come si può portare questo concetto di rigenerazione alla governance viene dalle società benefit, potremmo definirle anche regenerative companies, che quindi sono aziende che proprio per legge statutariamente scrivono la rigenerazione come scopo del loro operato. E NATIVA è stata la prima a portare questo modello, diciamo, in Europa e in Italia, attorno al 2015-2016. Quindi prendere il meglio da un modello for profit, il meglio del modello non profit, e fare in modo che intrinsecamente un'azienda vada in questa direzione e punti verso appunto creare più valore di quello che prende. Allora, dal 2016 questo è stato l'andamento di crescita, siamo arrivati a quasi 5.000 aziende, circa 250.000 persone in Italia, quasi 70 miliardi di fatturato complessivo. Viene fuori che queste aziende crescono quasi il doppio più rapidamente e sono anche un pochino più profitable di quelle che sono aziende, diciamo, tradizionali che non hanno fatto proprio questi concetti. Qua vedete alcuni dei nomi, molti li riconoscerete, appunto sono migliaia e migliaia in Italia e decine di migliaia nel mondo, e ci sono ad esempio città come Roma che hanno scelto di promuovere questo modello per tutte le decine di migliaia di aziende che ci sono sul territorio della città. Stessa cosa sta accadendo ad esempio nelle Marche, la regione Puglia sta spingendo questi modelli, la regione Veneto, domani avremo un incontro molto importante provincia di Sondrio con Regione Lombardia proprio per diffondere questi modelli, questi paradigmi e gli strumenti che servono poi per tradurli in pratica. Concludo con 7 secondi. Stiamo anche collaborando a questo progetto di portata globale, queste sono le guidelines di ISO, International Standard Organization, e stiamo collaborando nel gruppo di advisory per definire quella che si chiama Purpose Driven Governance. Quindi ci sono delle linee guida, sono già in fase avanzata di elaborazione e entro quest'anno forse o l'anno prossimo verranno diffusi in 192 paesi queste linee guida che servono proprio a incorporare la rigenerazione nella governance di qualsiasi azienda, ma anche grandissime aziende multinazionali. Quindi benvenuti, andiamo avanti su questa strada e passo la parola credo a Veronica.
Assolutamente, grazie. Una piccola cosa, Eric, io spero che in questi mondi che si stanno impollinando si arrivi anche a far sì che non si continui a misurare il progresso con il PIL, perché chiaramente quelle due linee di crescita e di benessere, se non vanno vicine, è perché il PIL non è il modo di misurare la crescita e il benessere economico. Veronica, a te.
Grazie mille, è un piacere essere qui con voi oggi. E se siamo qui oggi in realtà è perché non ci riconosciamo o non ci riconosciamo completamente nel sistema economico attuale. È un sistema economico che sì, ha creato del progresso, ma allo stesso tempo, come abbiamo sentito, ha generato profonde disuguaglianze, ha degradato l'ambiente e ha trattato le risorse come se fossero inesauribili. E quindi la cosa triste è che siamo stati noi a creare le regole del gioco attraverso le nostre decisioni, ma questa è anche un'opportunità perché noi queste regole le possiamo cambiare. E quindi io sono qui oggi per rappresentare V-Lab, che è nata 20 anni fa con questa consapevolezza che le regole del gioco possono cambiare e abbiamo questa missione ambiziosa di costruire un sistema economico che sia più inclusivo, equo e rigenerativo per tutte le persone e il pianeta. E nonostante questa missione sia ambiziosa, non è però solamente una missione concettuale, è qualcosa che è già pratica, perché infatti B-Lab è un network globale no profit che supporta il movimento delle B Corp. Le B Corp sono aziende che si impegnano quotidianamente nell'usare il business come forza positiva e quindi compiono delle azioni concrete, misurabili e verificabili perché si arrivi appunto alla creazione di un sistema economico diverso. E come cambiamo il sistema? Come agisce B-Lab in questo cambiamento? Innanzitutto cambiando il comportamento delle imprese, perché le imprese sono gli attori centrali del sistema economico, sono quelle che creano l'occupazione, sono quelle che creano i beni e i servizi e sono quelle che hanno un impatto diretto sulla comunità, il territorio e l'ambiente. E come fa B-Lab a influenzare le aziende nel loro comportamento? Attraverso la creazione di strumenti e standard. Gli standard di B-Lab offrono uno strumento e un percorso chiaro e concreto alle aziende per misurare e gestire il proprio impatto. E quest'anno B-Lab ha anche lanciato una nuova versione dello standard, perché lo standard è sempre in evoluzione, ma questa nuova versione è davvero molto significativa perché diciamo alziamo l'asticella per tutte le aziende, cioè adesso tutte le aziende certificate B Corp devono non solo performare in tutte le aree di impatto che vanno appunto a trattare i temi più urgenti, dal lavoro equo ai diritti umani all'azione per il clima, ma devono anche dimostrare un miglioramento continuo e questo deve essere appunto verificato da una terza parte indipendente. Quindi invece un altro livello su cui B-Lab agisce è quello del cambiamento culturale, ridefinire culturalmente la narrativa e il ruolo del business e questo viene fatto attraverso campagne, eventi, collaborazione con le istituzioni, le università per diffondere appunto il concetto di business come forza positiva. E poi ovviamente attraverso il movimento delle B Corp che attraverso le loro azioni ispirano tutte le altre aziende a adottare un comportamento simile. E poi dopodiché anche un cambiamento strutturale. È difficile sì influenzare la politica, però B-Lab è impegnata in questo anche, come ha parlato Eric, a livello della governance. In molti paesi adesso, Italia compresa, è presente la struttura della società benefit che permette alle aziende di includere il loro impegno verso comunità e pianeta direttamente nelle loro strutture di governance. Quindi vediamo un po' di numeri. Oggi il movimento delle B Corp conta più di 10.000 aziende in tutto il mondo che insieme occupano più di 1 milione di lavoratori e lavoratrici e in Italia abbiamo più di 370 B Corp che tutte insieme occupano più di 50.000 lavoratori e lavoratrici. 330.000 imprese in tutto il mondo utilizzano già B-Impact, che è la piattaforma gratuita messa a disposizione da B-Lab per le aziende per confrontarsi con lo standard. Quindi ogni azienda può iniziare da oggi a misurare, monitorare e migliorare il proprio impatto e chi vuole poi fare il passo successivo può richiedere la certificazione e in questo caso i dati e le evidenze caricate su B-Impact vengono verificati da un ente terzo indipendente. Ma nella pratica cosa significa questo? Io sono esposta tutti i giorni a storie di impatto operando insieme alle B Corp e quindi oggi vi voglio portare con me in Sud America dove opera questa azienda, Yerba Madre, che è coinvolta nella produzione di erba mate, che è una pianta che serve per fare una bevanda tradizionale e normalmente è coltivata in un sistema di monocultura intensiva che provoca quindi deforestazione, utilizzo di pesticidi e anche sfruttamento degli agricoltori. L'azienda Yerba Madre ha ribaltato questo paradigma, infatti lavora insieme alla natura, non contro la natura, perché ha trovato un meccanismo per coltivare l'erba mate proprio all'ombra degli alberi della foresta nativa, e la coltiva insieme a popolazioni indigene e piccoli agricoltori che coltivano quest'erba da generazione. Quindi tramite questo cambiamento di paradigma, dove c'era deforestazione ora c'è riforestazione, dove c'era sfruttamento ora c'è partnership e dove c'era vulnerabilità ora c'è forza. E ho ancora qualche secondo per andare un passo oltre. Ci siamo chiesti, ma cosa potrebbe succedere se tutte le aziende iniziassero a comportarsi come le B Corp in questo studio The Nature of Business? E quindi abbiamo visto in particolare sull'azione per il clima, come diceva il professor Vineis, l'emergenza climatica non è solamente ambientale, è un'emergenza sociale, quindi per questo ci siamo concentrati su questo punto. Ecco, secondo questo studio, con il nuovo standard di B-Lab, a tutte le B Corp è richiesto di fissare obiettivi che sono basati sui target scientifici. Quindi se tutte le aziende lo facessero, entro il 2100 potremmo arrivare ad una riduzione della temperatura globale di 0,5 gradi centigradi, potremmo evitare 600.000 decessi dovuti alle conseguenze del cambiamento climatico, ma anche ridurre il rischio di estinzione per migliaia di specie animali e vegetali. E quindi questa è la potenza delle aziende rigenerative e questa è l'idea di economia rigenerativa di B-Lab, quindi non un'azienda che si muove da sola, ma tutte le aziende che si muovono insieme attraverso un'azione collettiva passo dopo passo, e il movimento delle B Corp sta già tracciando questo percorso, che quindi non è solo possibile, ma è già in atto.
Grazie.
Grazie a voi.
Adesso invito a raggiungerci Ian Roberts e Davide Bollati. Ian vanta una 25ennale esperienza in campo agroalimentare e da quando è in Bühler la sua azienda ha avuto una trasformazione digitale che aiuta le aziende, i suoi clienti, a massimizzare gli obiettivi di sostenibilità. E ha anche creato però delle partnership per creare appunto quell'ecosistema che è fondamentale per avere un impatto. È presidente dell'acceleratore startup Mass Challenge ed è amministratore di Restore, che è una piattaforma globale di ripristino del territorio. Davide invece è entrato nell'azienda di famiglia nel 1992, anche lui ovviamente ha una visione a lungo corso ed è partito dalla ricerca per poi arrivare al marketing, alle vendite, e è diventato presidente dell'azienda dopo essere stato direttore generale. Allora, io adesso passo all'inglese perché ci sarà una poi naturale conversazione tra Ian, che non parla italiano, e Davide, e poi ovviamente anche Veronica ed Eric. So, Ian, I will start with you. Yes. So, how do you create a marketplace for startups that utilize side streams? Oh, you need a microphone. Is it on?
Yes, I think that's on. Firstly, Christina, can I say thank you very much for the opportunity to join here. When Andrea invited me, I was quite uncertain of what I would find. I've been deeply impressed, and it's wonderful to be part of this. If I can take one step back before the question, I think three things are really important for us. I think we've heard already, we're not going to solve problems without industry. We have to get industry on board, because industry operates at scale. And there is no impact without scale. And industry leaders generally don't have to get voted back in after 3 years. So they can take long-term decisions if they're smart enough. And I think this is tremendously important. And I think the third thing is that nobody can do this alone. We have to build ecosystems of purpose where innovators can link with people who can help them scale their solutions. We have so many brilliant ideas that are isolated, but they are not being scaled, and because they're not scaled, they don't drive adequate impact. So, to answer your question, I think there's several ways of doing it. In 2015, I took the license to bring an accelerator called Mass Challenge to Switzerland. Mass Challenge is an NGO, so we make no money from the startups. And we realized we could do a very good job at helping startups to grow their businesses. And when we realized we could do a good job of helping them grow their businesses, then we realized that we could do something else. We could help them grow their businesses to be responsible, sustainable, by design from a small business. It's very hard to retrofit better practices on a big business, and we all have to do it, and we fight with that every day. But if we can create companies that are sustainable through design, then we have a great advantage. And by that I mean where their core business model makes them more sustainable, the more successful that they are. And we created the tools to enable them to take those strategic decisions and to tweak their business model to drive sustainability impact. I think this is very important because we see lots of nice companies, don't we, with a business report and a sustainability report. If they're not the same, you have to question if it's really the core of the business and the purpose of the company. So we did that, and we learned how to do it, and we started looking more and more at how do we scale these companies. Our partners are Mars, Nestle, Louis Dreyfus. If you don't know them, one of the 4 biggest trading companies in the world for food. Companies like Givaudan, like Firmenich, DSM, and many, many more. And we realized, what's the big challenge for all of these companies? Now, if you think of the food system, 30% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions, approximately, are food and ag. So yes, we have to do the energy transition, but if we don't change the food and ag system, we're still not going to win. But if we can use the scale of a Dreyfus and a Mars to scale a company that drives highly positive impact, suddenly you can move the dial, you can make a very big difference. And we looked at this and we said, look, if I know what is grown in the field that goes to waste, 30% of food goes to waste. Think about that. That's terrible. It's unforgivable, in a world where we have digital transparency and capabilities. Now that's 30% of what's produced in 30% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So if I can take that side stream from food, and I know where they all are now from our partners, and I can identify who needs what from those side streams. Who needs a molecule for a flavor? Who needs a precursor for sustainable polymers for their packaging? Who needs to extract the proteins because they have a good business? Who wants this side stream with the anti-nutrients removed by solid-state fermentation, and they can then put it into animal feed instead of something else? How do we upcycle? And if we define these questions correctly, then we can say, who in the world has the capability to turn this side stream or this side stream into these different products? And then not only do you find a technical solution, you create the marketplace that enables the company to thrive. Now, just to say, for Mass Challenge last year, we had 2,500 startups apply to our program in Switzerland from 112 countries. Between them, over 10 years, the startups that we have helped, we've been a small part of their journey, have hired 90,000 people. I find this staggering. This role that we can play to enable small companies by thinking about how we create marketplaces and how we match brilliant innovators with scaling opportunities. So that, I think, answers your question.
Thank you. It definitely does, and it's a perfect lead. For Davide to jump into the conversation. You have many pointers, so I will let you go because I know in the last hour there's been a wonderful entendre between the two of you.
Yes. I agree that startups with disruptive innovation are very important, but it's also important to have incremental innovation from those big guys. So you need to have a combination, and the startups, of course, then they enter in, they can offer this disruptive innovation to big companies, then big companies have to incorporate them. I think it's super important to have this notion of decoupling that Eric suggested, because you want to continue to grow your activities as a company, and you want to be exemplary for decoupling on the framework that the scientific committee of RSF already put together. It's a must to have a company that follows this multidimensional regenerative framework. And I see in these hours or so of conversation, I had a vision of the world like full of little dots. Some dots with a negative, with a minus, and some dots with a plus. So now we have a lot of minuses, some strong minuses or big minuses or some small, and then we have a few dots with a plus, some big and some small. So the idea is that you have a core in your company. You need to work on the adjacency of the core as much as possible, and add a plus, and the plus that become dominant versus the minuses, and then all the ecosystem will be restored. So we need to work on a kind of reverse engineering, and in order to do that, it takes a lot of work in the company.
I'm going to interrupt you because you also are on a timer. I know you have some practical examples that I think it's worth sharing with our public.
Yes. Okay. In Davines, we have a thinking that is regenerative. It's in the way we do business. So we have a few examples. Maybe the one that is more common and more and very much matching the multidimensional system that we'll present later is this EROC, Regenerative Organic Agriculture. We're talking about ecosystem. It's an opportunity for us to really touch all the our ecosystem or supply chain. So we go upstream with all our raw materials. So those raw materials will become, instead of raw materials of extracting mode, are raw materials that bring a positive contribution to regeneration through regenerative organic practices in agriculture that are measured on many different systems, and we have a very good measuring mechanism that certifies that. So with these practices of EROC, we can be exemplary, we can be circular, we can be decarbonizing, and so we say we tick off the boxes of the multidimensional system that we will present a bit later.
And also you have systems to engage the community and involve young people, so the fact that we are adding nature and plants and with all their wonderful properties that we know also has a positive return to you, because you in that way you're harvesting raw materials also that you use in botanics that you use in your products. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, we also have a different nature of a project that have the same nature, they have the same thinking process. For example, also in regeneration of communities, or it can be in real estate. And one thing that now we learn it the hard way is that we always have to have a radical intimacy between economy, climate, and happiness, or if you want, you can call it or ESG, or you can call it. There are different ways to call it, but you cannot progress if you don't have extreme intimacy between those three elements together.
And that leads to a question. How do you get the finance world, because everyone speaks their own language, everyone's using their own metrics, how do you actually get them to understand what you want to do and invest and share the purpose?
I think we have to learn to speak the language of the people we talk to, which sounds terrible, me speaking English to a room full of Italian speakers. I'm very sorry. But if you think about finance, what are people very good at? They're very, very good at judging business plans by the rules that they've always understood. So when we built the tools to support companies to build their mission and strategy, we then mapped all their impact to their business plans. And we built their 10-year business plans in the economics that investors understand. Because we said, it's going to take us a lifetime to get most VCs and private equity companies to really understand what we mean around sustainability or regenerative companies. So what we should do is we should give them the faith and the understanding that when they read the business plan and it's come through what we do in Mass Challenge, that if that business plan is an investable and attractive one, then the impact corresponds to the attractiveness of the business plan. And we do that translation of language for them, because otherwise we wait too long in trying to create the frameworks and then educate them on the frameworks. We have to do it, but I need more time to do that.
Eric, how do you respond to this?
About financing?
Well, yeah, and also about, you know, the fact that sometimes you have to kind of cut to the finish line.
Yeah, I'm thinking what was said about politics and policy making, because the playing field is not leveled, so we are not playing on the same level, and you can still be very profitable while creating a lot of damage. The most massive example is with the fossil fuel industry, which gets, depending on how you count it, between 1.5 trillion and 7 trillion of subsidies in order to operate. And so it is an industry which is absolutely profitable, but if you take away all the damages and all the subsidies that are paid by public money, it wouldn't be competitive today, so not in the future. So we can, I think, do a lot to accelerate this shift in policy making in order to make it more even and make the business case more, let's say, fair with respect to what it is today. At the same time, what is emerging that sustainable or regenerative strategies which are well implemented are absolutely positive also from a traditional point of view in terms of business results. So we have to improve our capacity to innovate towards sustainability, towards regeneration, and create role models that make everything else obsolete, which is happening with many of the companies. Davines is an example, and also what you were talking about, the startups, you just show that there is a different way, and who is not doing it says, oh, maybe I should go in that direction. So the role of role models really has a huge impact also in accelerating the changing policies.
Tipping point, you know, as I shared with you before, I mean, I lived on my own body the fact that I missed a tipping point, right? And I'm blessed that it was not. I mean, I'm learning that so many people actually have developed serious pathologies because of the fact that we go into a system collapse. So how do we recognize tipping points before we've gone too far? How do we keep a positive attitude? I was a very early adopter and sharer of the SDGs until I probed so deeply into the agenda, learning that the misalignment of indices is so extreme that those are not accountable numbers. So how can we keep a tangible, credible, accountable hope high?
We've been discussing about this topic since 55 years. The Club of Rome started in the 70s to start to bring the topic of planetary boundaries. I think it will take another 20, 30 years at least for us to get out of this very turbulent situation. The next 20 years will be a bit tough because, as Johan Rockstone says, now we are entering into a high risk zone. So far we were like low risk, now we are medium. in 2030 we'll be in a high risk, unpredictable zone in a few years from now, maybe 2030 on. And I know that there is a lot of new technologies, some Nobel Prizes, they say that, or even Bill Gates say that soon we'll fix everything, but we don't know. We don't have any evidence of it, so I think we need to have some principle of precaution. But we are so short-sighted, we are so stubborn, and so we don't see things as human beings. It's incredible. I was in Dubai last week for this Global Wellness Summit. Incredible minds, incredible doctors, incredible medicine, the incredible refined mind for a week talking about how to live longer, and gene decoding. I mean, all kinds of crazy things, but nobody talk about that. If you live longer, but what about the environment around you? So we are extremely blindsided.
Yeah. I mean, that which circles back to the politics. We're in a city, we are immersed in poisonous air. I mean, we can't, now it's on our phones too when we wake up in the morning, so it's not very good news. So
we should change the genetic code in a different way. Good idea.
Exactly. Okay, so we do still have some minutes. How do you envision, because of Davide's, okay, I think we all need to put resilience as a key word in our word cloud. But how do we see the next 5 years? Because, it's the Regeneration Forum 2030, and a lot has been done since 2020. We are in the mid-journey. What do you see ahead, and how do we navigate this time? We can do a quick round of answers, starting with you.
Yeah, look, I remain optimistic. I mean, I've spent quite a lot of time with Johan Rockström. He is still optimistic that we can drive change. Just because our understanding gets better doesn't mean we can't act. But the problem is not technology. The problem in my eyes is not government. The problem is us. It's very simply us.
Yeah.
If you want to drastically drop your carbon footprint, don't drive a car. Don't fly, stop eating meat. Problem solved, okay? Now, hands up, who's going to do it? So let's be realistic here. Every time I go to a university, I see the most extraordinary talent when we go and lecture, when we go and talk to them, when we talk to startups. You have to have optimism. These people are brilliant. But what is in our way is our own behavior and our own refusal to change how we live. So it's on us. We can talk forever, but it's on us to drive the change.
I could jump in there and say, we here have a freedom of choice. When you go into nutrition and you look at how food is priced, many people don't have a choice but to eat crap, and that's where you go into the United States and you wonder why they are where they are, where we are.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're poisoning their systems with very low nutritionally, non-nutritious food.
Calorie dense, micronutrient low products that are the cheapest and the affordable thing. But then we do a lot of business in Africa. You have people who simply cannot afford the calories to survive the day.
Absolutely.
And that, again, you can do business, you can solve those problems. Technologies are there, capabilities are there.
Unfortunately, in the next 10 years, there will be 100 million new houses built in India. There will be lots of, there are areas in the world that don't even talk about sustainability. There are incredible constructions everywhere. Again, just back from Middle East, they are building like crazy in areas where during the summer you have 45, 50 degrees. And then, how are you going to cool down this? So there is an incremental aspect that is really disturbing. I think that in Europe we have the possibility to be a reference on those things because the other parts of the world, they are into different situations. So we are the less and we should really capitalize on this and have and be smart and include also emerging economies. We know there are signs that China is leading this transition. We know that China is kind of like a Pandora box, so we need to be careful in how to handle it. But we need to have a long-term strategy that unfortunately has to include also the public, because yes, okay, but if we don't have if you are not able to find a governance from the public sector, it's not going to happen.
And I'll jump in quickly on that note. I was in India last year at the peak of the very intense poisonous air, and it was horrific. It made me think that when we were reading Ministry for the Future, it was physically so disturbing that I was gagging. You couldn't breathe, right? And then I started reading articles on the progress that China is making. So this is a very provocative statement. But what happens in countries that are autocracies is that if you decide you are going to do something, something is done. And China has applied rigorous rules to the various regions. They have to comply. They don't have a choice. It's horrible to admit that democracy in this sense fails. But that just to hand it over to you, Veronica.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, does it work? Yeah. No, it was very interesting, and a lot of things that have been said really resonates with me. One thing that I've heard is common language, the need of a common language. In my experience with a lot of companies that are starting in their journey of measuring the impact, sometimes they don't know what to measure, they don't know what matters, they are already doing things, they cannot really see that, or they may do something that is impactful for a certain stakeholder, they don't know it. So it's very important to have a framework, something that can guide us on what matters, but it's also very important to make sure that stakeholders are engaged and to understand who the important stakeholders are for an action, a business, anything. Because, for example, in the example I made of the B Corp, they engaged with indigenous people, and the indigenous people knew more about yerba mate than companies that were exploiting the system to grow it. So common language, stakeholder engagement are two very important things. Another thing that I heard is small businesses can be sustainable or regenerative by design, but again, because larger businesses are supporting them, because larger businesses have more resources, something that small businesses don't have, and at the same time, the impact of larger businesses has more scale. So we need to really include everyone. So common language, engagement of the right stakeholders, and inclusion. It's something that is very important for me to be able to be optimist and see the progress in the future.
Thank you. To you, Eric, to close the session.
What makes me hopeful, and I'm quoting Winston Churchill, and he said that people and nations, or maybe it was someone else, but people and nations behave wisely once they have exhausted all other alternatives. So I don't say we have exhausted all other alternatives, but this status is approaching very quickly, what I see in the next 5 to 10 years. Go back to 2020. Imagine you are January 2020 and they give you a piece of paper and they ask you, write down what will happen in the next 5 years. And then look at what has happened in the last 5 years. So take what could happen based on the previous 5 years experience in the next 5 to 10 years and multiply this by 10 or 100 times, and probably gives you the level of, how can I say, of chaos, of disruption. And here what makes me hopeful is that with respect to decades ago, we have so many examples, the dozens of thousands of businesses, the people like us. There are probably 100 conferences like this in the world going on right now today. And by the way, it's Thanksgiving Day, so let's be grateful for that. And so once the chaos erupts and you cannot cope anymore, you will have so many things to look at which you did not consider before. And you will start to say, oh, maybe I should go in that way. in that direction, but until what you are doing still works, you're not really in the position to consider some deep transformation. So we will have many, many opportunities to consider deep transformation.
Thank you. That idea of backcasting is brilliant. I think that should happen in every organization, from families to companies. Really look back and look forward, cast forward, and then go back to what you wrote 5 years later. Okay, questions from the public. The clock is ticking. There's lots of silence. Have we answered all your questions? There is a question. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Marcello Palazzi, co-founder of the B Corp movement in Europe. It's actually a statement because I've been going to China together with Johan Rockström the last 2 or 3 years. And I agree with what Davide said about the Pandora's box. But what actually is happening is that China is moving so fast on the green transition that we need to learn from China.
Absolutely.
So, whether we like it or not, we need to learn from China because now the US has of course gone astray. So the plea is, and I obviously know Italy, Marco Polo, there is also a tradition of there is a relationship with China. I find in Europe, countries are either for China or against China. It's very polarized. But I think there's an opportunity for us to learn from China. So let's do that. And then the final thing to say is that there's actually a very large group of leaders, including the wife of the premier, who's very pro-planet, pro-nature. And Chinese philosophy does have, of course, mountains, lakes, nature. So there is an opportunity now that China is actually taking, knowing that the world is actually going the other way. So I think it's just a plea for doing that. Thank you.
Absolutely. They also have ancient wisdoms, and they are so deeply regenerative. I mean, another question.
Hi, I'm Lorenzo Firamonti from NATIVA. The question is about hegemony, an old-fashioned concept, an Italian concept, by the way. Antonio Gramsci made it famous. We see around the world a wave of conservatism in politics that has openly declared that they want to be hegemonic in how they lead global narratives. They have challenged conventional wisdom without precedents, not just in the US, also in Europe. Don't you think that time has come for the progressives and those that have been defending the climate, and also the fact that it's not the climate the problem, it's us, if we want to ensure that we can live and thrive on this planet? I keep telling my students, the planet doesn't care about climate. The planet doesn't have a say whether it's livable or not, it doesn't really care. It's for us. But don't you think that progressives, from the Club of Rome onward, have been way too soft, have been way too divided, have been way too philosophical about it? Look at what Trump is doing. He's changing the institutional apparatus by kicking out anyone that actually believes in climate change. In Argentina, using the word climate change in public documents is forbidden, and so in many different countries. Oh, so we're going backward. More and more people believe that climate change may be a hoax, that maybe it's happening for natural reasons, and in any case, it may not even affect us. So how do you change within the system, and what is the political proposal you will make?
Thanks. You. You have the mic.
I'm not going to directly answer your question, because my knowledge of politics is inadequate. Look, I work for a family-owned company. That's my day job. What I told you about was my evening and weekend job. Now, my day job, I'm Chief Technology Officer for a company that provides a technology that feeds 2 to 3 billion people a day. All right? Now, our customers sit all over the world. So I want to give you a perspective of what industry is doing in these countries. In the US, we've just seen the best example so far that I've seen of financing through a value chain the transition to regenerative agriculture. And the company that has done it, so it's a milling company called Star of the West, you can look it up, it's public now, is now using this to capture more market from their customers and against their competitors. This is in the US. When I talk to CEOs from the US, they say, yeah, absolutely. The rhetoric has changed. But we have to move faster because the agenda is more critical and it is burning. But we have to change how we talk about it, because if we're not able to do business, we're not able to drive change. And I think that's very, very important. I think in Europe, our industry leaders need to be kept on track because we have an opportunity to drive differentiation through a much better way of running companies, and that sustainability agenda should be the thing that drives us to innovate. And this is what Europe's very good at. We understand diversity of culture. We've always had a mixing pot of people with different, we have an Italian professor at Imperial. That's what we used to. We're used to having people moving around into thought positions. This helps us innovate and capture the power of our diverse population. And to the comment about China, we have to learn from China. China's overtaken us.
Yeah.
They've overtaken us in driving the sustainability agenda, and not in discussing it, in executing it and doing it. They're out innovating us. You don't go there for low-cost manufacturing anymore. You don't go there because you can get things copied fast. You go there because they're leading global innovation. When you have millions of engineering graduates every year, you learn to innovate. That's just what happens. So I think we should drive change through industry leaders because they employ people. I don't know how to tackle the problem of politicians who frankly shouldn't be in power. All right? But maybe that starts with us in voting as well.
Thank you. Eric, did anyone have, because we're a bit over time.
Well, just a very brief comment. Totally on spot on when you say that this is innovation. This is capital I, innovation. If it's not going in this direction, it's not innovation. If it's solving problems by creating problems somewhere else, it's not innovation. So I think here in this room, around the Regenerative Society Foundation and the networks and examples we have been quoting today are really the cutting edge of what real innovation is. And so we should be aware of this and empowering businesses through this kind of innovation and business together influencing politics. But yeah, starting from business because it's a survival issue and it's natural for businesses to innovate. So,
thank you very much. That's okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm deciding it's okay.
No, but we live in a moment where politics is into short-termism, with very, very few exceptions. And then, so it's up to companies to have a more longer-termism, because companies, they want to have longevity. And then, on our side, there are new generations and consumers.
And to end on the powers, practice Tai Chi. I ask you to bring on what we feel, and not only, but if there's an ancient practice that really teaches you to feel nature and connect with nature, it's the world of Qi. And it's fascinating because I think we need to be using our entire selves and not only our minds. Thank you very much.